We need to
HOA
address
Karen
this
mocked my brother.
situation
He's the
immediately
sheriff of the
for the
county.
safety of
You
everyone
probably
here.
think this is just another small story about some nosy neighbor, right? Wrong. This was one of those battles that started as something small, but then it grew into something so big that the whole neighborhood still talks about it today. It started with a simple insult, but it ended with a storm of consequences that no one in that HOA ever saw coming. My brother has always been a calm man. He is not someone who throws his title around, not someone who demands respect just because he wears a badge. No, he is the kind of man who believes respect is earned by actions, not words. But when Karen mocked him, she did not just laugh at my brother. She laughed at everything he stood for, his hard work, his years of service, and the way he dedicated his life to protecting the very same people who now sat silent while she ridiculed him. It all began one sunny afternoon. The neighborhood HOA had called a meeting, and everyone was gathered in the clubhouse. I remember the smell of fresh coffee, the hum of the air conditioning, and the low chatter of neighbors waiting for the meeting to start. My brother had shown up, not because he wanted to argue with anyone, but because he wanted to listen. He believed that being involved in the community meant showing up, even if you did not always agree with the people in charge. And there she was, Karen, you know the type, always in the center, always talking the loudest, always acting like she knew what was best for everyone. She wore her usual bright outfit, her hair sprayed so stiff it didn't move an inch, and that smug smile that never seemed to leave her face. When she saw my brother walk in, she rolled her eyes as if the sight of him was some kind of inconvenience. "Here comes the sheriff," she said loudly, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Her voice carried across the room, sharp like a knife. "What's the matter? Couldn't find any real crime to deal with today, so you decided to waste your time here with us." People laughed. Not everyone, but enough that it stung. My brother's face stayed calm, but I knew him. I knew how much he hated that kind of mockery. Not because it hurt his pride, but because it made light of his duty. He had seen things these people couldn't even imagine. Broken homes, shattered families, lives cut short because of reckless choices. And here was Karen, treating his job like it was some kind of joke. I clenched my fists under the table. My instinct was to stand up and shut her down, but my brother shook his head ever so slightly. He didn't want to fight, not yet. He simply nodded at her, gave a polite smile, and found a seat in the back of the room. That should have been the end of it. But with Karen, things never end that easily. The meeting dragged on with its usual nonsense. Complaints about lawns being too long, trash cans left out a little too early, children being too noisy in the evenings. It was like the HOA thrived on picking apart the smallest details of everyone's lives. My brother sat quietly, listening, taking mental notes. I could tell he was patient, but I could also tell his patience had limits. Then Karen struck again. She stood up in the middle of the discussion about neighborhood security, and with that same mocking tone, she said, "Well, since we have a sheriff here, maybe he can finally do something useful. Or does he only wear the badge for the free donuts?" This time, the laughter was louder. A few people tried to stop themselves, but the damage was done. Karen smirked, enjoying every second of it. She wanted to humiliate him. She wanted to strip away the respect he carried, and she wanted to make herself look powerful in front of the others. I turned to my brother, waiting for him to explode, but he didn't. He just sat there, his hands folded, his jaw tight. His silence wasn't weakness. No, it was something else. It was the kind of silence that meant he was calculating, planning, waiting for the right moment. And trust me, that moment was coming. After the meeting ended, Karen strutted out like she had won some great battle. People whispered, some shaking their heads, others chuckling nervously. My brother walked past her without a word. He didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. But as soon as we got to the car, I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't over. "You know what's funny?" he said softly, almost to himself. "She thinks she can tear people down with words. But words have weight. And when they cross the line, they carry consequences." That was the first time I realized just how serious he was. He wasn't just angry. He was determined. And when my brother gets determined, there's no stopping him. Over the next few days, Karen didn't stop. She doubled down. At every chance she got, She made little comments about my brother. She would sneer when she saw his patrol car, mutter insults under her breath when he walked by, and even spread rumors about how he abused his power just to make herself look like some kind of hero. What she didn't know was that while she was busy mocking him, my brother was quietly gathering information. He wasn't out for revenge, not in the petty sense. But he was watching. He was paying attention to the things everyone else ignored. And slowly, the picture started to form. Karen wasn't just a loudmouth. She wasn't just a bully. She was breaking rules herself, rules the HOA claimed to care so much about. She was parking illegally, cutting corners on her property, using community funds for her own projects, and intimidating neighbors who disagreed with her. All those little things she accused others of, she was guilty of them herself. The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who mocked the sheriff for not doing his job was about to find out just how good he was at it. But here's the part that really shook me. My brother didn't rush in. He didn't slam her with everything at once. No, he built his case carefully. He knew that if he went after her, it had to be solid. No loopholes, no mistakes, no room for her to twist the story. He wanted the truth to speak louder than her voice. And as the weeks went by, that truth started to shine. Neighbors who had been too scared to speak up started coming forward. They told stories of Karen threatening fines, of her bending rules, of her singling people out just because she didn't like them. One family even admitted they almost moved out because of her constant harassment. I could see it in my brother's eyes. The storm was building. He wasn't just protecting himself anymore. He was standing up for everyone who had been crushed under Karen's false power. One evening, as we sat on the porch, he turned to me and said, "You know, sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is not to fight them head on. It's to let them expose themselves. Because when they do, the fall is harder than anything you could imagine." And I knew then Karen's fall was coming. The storm didn't take long to arrive. Karen had spent weeks mocking, laughing, and trying to tear down my brother's name. But what she didn't know was that every insult she threw was only digging her own grave deeper. The sheriff wasn't going to fight her with anger. He was going to fight her with truth. The first crack in her armor showed at another HOA meeting. This time, my brother didn't sit quietly. When Karen stood up, loud as ever, complaining about how neighbors weren't following rules, my brother calmly raised his hand. The room went silent. People weren't used to seeing him speak up in these meetings. He stood, his voice steady but powerful. "Karen, since you care so much about the rules, maybe you'd like to explain why your car has been parked in the fire lane every night this week? Or maybe why the HOA funds show charges from your account that don't match any approved projects." The room froze. Karen's smile cracked. Just for a moment, she stammered, That's none of your business." But it was too late. Everyone was watching. My brother didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult her. He simply laid out the facts. Respect works both ways. You want others to follow rules? Then you should follow them too. Whispers filled the room. Neighbors exchanged looks, some nodding, some finally smiling after months of being silenced. For the first time, Karen didn't look powerful. She looked cornered, but my brother wasn't done. He had been patient, but now he was ready. Over the next week, he quietly delivered evidence to the HOA board. Receipts, photos, testimonies from neighbors who finally had the courage to speak up. Everything was lined up, clean and clear. He didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. Karen, of course, tried to fight back. She went door to door, spreading lies. She claimed my brother was abusing his power, that he was intimidating her, that he was trying to take over the HOA. But the more she spoke, the more desperate she sounded. And the more desperate she sounded, the more people began to see through her act. The turning point came at the biggest HOA meeting of the year. Everyone was there. You could feel the tension the moment you walked in. Karen strutted the front like she still owned the place, but her eyes darted nervously around the room. She knew something was coming. My brother walked in quietly, as always. No uniform, no badge on display, just himself. But the weight of his presence filled the room. He let the board speak first. They went through the usual agenda, complaints, and updates. And then, at last, the subject of misuse of HOA funds was brought up, Karen laughed nervously. Oh, this is ridiculous. A misunderstanding. But then the board presented the evidence. Clear, undeniable, fact after fact. Money had been moved. Rules had been broken. Neighbors had been harassed. And every trail led back to Karen. The silence in the room was heavy. No one laughed this time. No one clapped for her. No one defended her. Finally, my brother spoke. You mocked me because of my job. You mocked me because I wear a badge. But I didn't need a badge to see the truth. The truth is, you've been breaking the very rules you forced on everyone else. And today it ends. Karen's face went pale. She shouted. She denied. She tried to twist the story. But it didn't matter. The evidence was too strong. The board voted. Karen was stripped of her HOA position that night. And let me tell you, the moment the vote was final, the room erupted. Neighbors who'd been quiet for so long finally clapped, cheered, and even hugged each other. It felt like a weight had been lifted off the entire community. For the first time in years, people felt free. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. She swore she would get back at everyone. But no one followed her. No one believed her. Her power was gone, and all she had left were empty threats. The days after were almost surreal. The neighborhood was different. Children played outside without fear of Karen complaining. Neighbors waved at each other instead of whispering. The board meetings became calmer, focused on real improvements instead of Karen's personal grudges. It was like the whole place could finally breathe. As for my brother, he didn't brag. He didn't celebrate. He just kept living his life, protecting people, serving the community. That's who he was. But every now and then, I caught him smiling when he saw neighbors enjoying themselves. And I knew, deep down, he was proud, because this wasn't just about him. This was about showing everyone that bullies don't win forever. Mockery and lies may be loud, but truth speaks louder. And when the sheriff finally decided to let the truth out, Karen never stood a chance. Even months later, people still talked about it. Not about Karen's insults, not about her false power, but about the night the sheriff exposed her. It became a story parents told their kids when they warned them about bullies. It became a reminder that sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is just patience, waiting for the right time to strike. And Karen? She moved away not long after. Couldn't stand the shame. Couldn't stand the fact that the neighborhood she once ruled over now saw her for what she really was. Her downfall wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and permanent. I'll never forget what my brother said after it was all over. We were sitting on the porch again, the sun setting, the air cool and peaceful. He looked at me and said, "Justice doesn't always come fast, but it always comes." And he was right.